Hey, what's up guys, Seth here, and I was going to do a guide on Constellars, but I was thinking that maybe that's not such a good idea, because everybody knows what Constellars are and what they do and things like that. What would be interesting is in fact a discussion about what the next tier 1 deck would be. Now we've got some newcomers to the actual meta in the next set, and then though I say meta, I also can mean anti-meta in the case of Monarchs. Now Shadow Spectres are bringing a few new cards, things like Gracili Goal or whatever, however you say it, and a lot of Monarch support, as well as the new card Pot of Duplicity. Now this is why we're featuring Constellars at the moment. You see, Constellars have one distinct advantage in a duel, and that is they can bounce their own cards back. This is especially useful for continuous traps or spells, such as Deck Lockdown or Safe Zone. Bounce your own Safe Zone, target your opponent's monster, and then when your Safe Zone leaves the field, you'll destroy your opponent's monster in the process. Now, the main thing about this deck is, when it comes to Constellars, is you lose a lot of hand advantage. There's no way to get that back. This deck has absolutely no draw power. This is why this spell card Constellar Starcradle was made. Though you skip a battle phase, you'll still get 2 Constellars to your hand, which will most likely be 1 Constellar to normal summon an extra time or special summon, and Chaos. Chaos will increase his level to 5. You'll get on rank 5 anyway, then you'll start bouncing cards with the 2500 beater. Now this isn't all about Constellars actually. The tier 1 deck, there's a few entries, and one of them could be the absolute best deck when it comes to facing anything, is Vers. Vers is already tier 1, people consider it tier 1. Some people consider it tier 2 at the moment, but we're not getting into that. What I will say is, with Pot of Duplicity, instead of having to go for a Kerakion, you can actually instead go for your typical play and just use Pot of Duplicity, bring back 3 cards, draw 2 cards, and you should get your hand advantage back. In the case of Vers, you can also use the continuous trap card and then get out whatever you don't need and put in exactly what you do need. This enables you to just keep using Vers Ophion, Evil Swarm people, I do call it Vers Ophion, over and over again, and your opponent will just get locked down with that. Add to that the fact that if you use Pot of Duplicity, there's a good chance that you will draw into an Eradicator Epidemic Virus, and that becomes a really nasty deck. Vers could be the best deck in the upcoming format. Now Pot of Duplicity is likely to get semi-limited. I see it come in September. It'll get semi-limited simply because in a Light Sworn deck, the applications could be absolutely destroying everything else. Whether you want to admit it or not, there is going to be Chaos Light Sworns with Pot of Duplicity. The last thing they need is even more draw power. If they can control the field a little bit better, and then their grave allows them to just get as many different types of monsters so that they can get it back their hand into their deck and draw 2, you could be looking at Light Sworn at tier 2. I'm not saying it's tier 1, but it could be tier 2, just if it's built right. Chaos Light Sworns could be tier 2. If not, then it could be Chaos Dragons again. Again, another format of Chaos Dragons. But that's kinda unlikely just because like Pulsar is not that good this format. Now back to Vers, we do have the new card coming out, which is Mistake. And this makes it so that you will have to, if you ever try to add a card to your hand, you'll just flip it up. You'll flip up the card, his trap card, and that'll be that. And the fact is, when it comes to Elemental Dragons, if you activate the effect of, say, Redox to add to the hand, that is one effect activation you've actually activated that turn. Even if it didn't resolve, you've activated it, so there's no chance that you can still use a Redox in a special summon or use the second effect. If you want to add to the hand with an Elemental Dragon and you get mistaked, you can't do anything else that turn. You're not using that dragon again that turn. So when it comes to this also, is mistake will prevent spellbooks from doing what they need to do. It's not as good as Imperial Iron Wall though. Imperial Iron Wall is still the best card. Now this could actually add up to other plays such as Kerykeion deck building, where Vers just take out Kerykeion, put in the Pot of Duplicity instead of Kerykeion. I'm not saying it's ideal, but they could also add the Imperial Iron Wall instead. And if they do that, they may not lose consistency. It is actually a possibility that the Imperial Iron Wall without Kerykeion can keep the deck still as consistent as it always was. It's just all about using that trap card correctly. Now with the addition of Gracili, I don't know how to say it, Gracili Gal, I don't know, Gal, they're going to need to get a TCG name for that. It's a possibility that Gishki, believe it or not, Gishki could make a comeback. Now, you may say that's impossible, that can't be done, it's not going to happen, not in a million years. Think about it this way. The highest attack power for the Gishki monster is 3200 attack. The highest attack power for an Elemental Dragon is 2800. No matter what happens, Gishkis will always be more powerful, and if Elemental Dragons can't XYZ because of that trap card, it's a good chance that they won't be able to beat Gishkis, especially with the fact that the Gishki card, is it Soul Ogre or something? You can shuffle a card back into the deck. It may cost them 1000 life points, but if you can get one Elemental Dragon off the field, worth it. So we're looking at a lot of newcomers to the tier 1. It's a possibility if someone builds it correctly, and I'm testament to this. Fire Fists are possible to get to tier 1. If you run 3 Imperial Iron Wall and a perfectly built Fire Fist deck, it can reach tier 1. And Dueling Network might be something that isn't, you can't take it for face value because it's not right. But at the same time, if you can get into the top 200 with a Fire Fist deck in Dueling Network when everybody's running spellbooks and Elemental Dragons, you could say to me that no one in Dueling Network is any good, that's not real dueling, but the card effects are still the same, the people using them are still the same. If I was dueling this against a computer, if I was dueling Fire Fist against Elemental Dragons with a computer, would you say that with my 100 victories that my deck was no good? 100 victories against a computer that knows how to use the deck. Just because the duelist is on Dueling Network doesn't mean that they're not a good duelist, it just means that the Elemental Dragons are not as good. At least not as good as everyone thinks. Now I brushed upon it before but I didn't really get into it, as Monarchs could be a newcomer to tier 1. It's possible, I don't see it happening, but it would have to be an anti-meta Monarch build. And with one Macrocosmos you can mess up an entire spellbook deck or an entire Elemental Dragon deck. It would encourage the meta, the speed that it is right now, to slow the fuck down. It would slow down a lot because people would have to run MSTs to stop Macrocosmos. At the moment Elemental Dragons don't run MSTs. Spellbooks sure as hell don't run MSTs. Except for in tournaments. Tournaments they'll run MSTs, but that is usually side decked. If you main deck their worst nightmare, game 1 you can still win. Game 2 they can side in their MSTs, but you can side in a bunch of shit as well. And as much as I hate the idea of Macro Monarchs becoming tier 1, trust me, I don't like Macrocosmos as a card. It shouldn't really exist. It shouldn't exist for no cost. But at the same time, anything to avoid this current state of the game, anything to avoid the 20 millionth Elemental Dragon Duelist. Anything to avoid someone coming to the game and saying, well, I was told that Elemental Dragons were good and I'm going to play them, but he plays them absolutely wrong. Up last on the actual tier 1 is, believe it or not, Heroes again. Now that doesn't sound quite right, but hear me out. The Chaos Hero variant that you may have seen Busfair using is actually a very good variant. Although he uses more of a Chaos deck, much more Chaos orientated, I would more like to see a deck where it's more like Butterspee beat. Just replace Bubble Beat with the Butterspee, whatever, I don't care. And you have a deck there that can probably get, like Karakuri was back in the day, just swarm the field with absolute boss monsters, Miracle Fusion, one Excalibur with the Butterspy card. That becomes a really intense combo. If you get a Alias Neos, let's say you get an Alias Neos, and then you use Knight Butterspy, you get another 4, you get your rank 4 Excalibur, 4000 attack, then you use Miracle Fusion, or there's a possibility to use Black Luster Soldier. That can be 7000 damage or more in one turn. In one turn, just because you ran that variant. Now, you can't deny results. Results are exactly what you're looking for in this deck, and it could be tier 1 if there is enough anti-meta in it. Now, how could you get that? Well, really, when it comes down to it, Dimensional Fissure. We could see the old hero variant D-Fissure deck from months and months ago still make a comeback because Elemental Dragons still use the grave. In fact, their only weakness really would be the Spellbook deck, but they can overrun that. There's still super polymerization, there is still plenty of traps they can use, and then after the fusion summon, there's still the Grusili Gal, or Go, or whatever the hell it's called, and that is a really strong card, especially for fusion monsters. No XYZs, no synchro summons? Yes please. Especially when Crimson Blader is getting really abused at the moment, so Heroes could be tier 1. Could be, but I put it on outside chances unless someone makes a very, very good deck. So guys, as it stands, I think that's about all I can say about the tier 1 that could be coming up soon. I hope you guys have enjoyed the duels at least, and I hope you guys have listened. Seriously, make a discussion on this. If you guys want to make a comment, you make a comment on what you think could be tier 1 up next. So it could be this format, it could be as soon as Shadow Spectres is released. Whatever happens, comment, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time.